Good morning, friends. Let me ask you something. Have you ever woken up in the morning and felt your mind racing, full of doubts, fears, and negative thoughts that seem impossible to shake off? You're not alone. Each one of us has a chatterbox in our minds that can be our best friend or our worst enemy. Today, I want to share with you how to silence that inner critic and bring peace to your mind forever. Negative thoughts are a natural part of being human, yet most of us struggle with them because we treat them as enemies rather than as messages from our own mind. The first step to silencing these thoughts is to understand that they are not permanent and they do not define who you are. They are fleeting, like clouds drifting across the sky, temporary disturbances in the otherwise clear expanse of your consciousness. When we try to forcefully suppress or fight negative thoughts, we often give them more energy and attention, inadvertently making them stronger. Instead, the power lies in learning to observe them with clarity and detachment. When you step back and become the observer of your own mind, you create a space between yourself and your thoughts, and it is in this space that true freedom arises. Observing your thoughts requires practice, but it is one of the most effective tools for cultivating mental resilience. Start by noticing the patterns of negativity without judgment. Perhaps it is the recurring worry about the future, a harsh inner critique about your abilities, or doubt about your worthiness. Instead of responding to these thoughts with resistance or self-criticism, acknowledge their presence. Recognize, for example, that the thought "I am not good enough" is simply a statement that your mind has generated, not an unchangeable truth. By naming the thought, you reduce its intensity, much like shining a light into a dark corner. Awareness itself diminishes fear because it shifts your mind from unconscious reactivity to conscious observation. Another critical aspect of this approach is the realization that thoughts are often impulsive and automatic. They arise from old habits, past experiences, or deeply ingrained beliefs, rather than from your present reality. When you observe without attachment, you begin to see these thoughts as transient mental events rather than commands that must be obeyed. This subtle shift in perspective transforms the way you interact with your own mind. You move from being a passive victim of your thoughts to becoming an active witness, capable of choosing which thoughts deserve your attention and which can be allowed to pass. Visualization can also enhance this practice. Imagine standing by a river and seeing leaves floating on the surface. Each negative thought is a leaf carried along by the current. You do not need to grab it, examine it, or push it away. You simply watch it drift past. This simple mental image reinforces detachment and reminds you that thoughts are temporary, moving entities. Over time, this habit of observing without reacting strengthens your capacity to remain calm and centered, even when faced with stress or adversity. Importantly, this practice is not about denying reality or pretending negative thoughts do not exist. It is about creating mental space where you can respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. By acknowledging and observing your thoughts, you develop a sense of clarity, insight, and emotional intelligence. You start to recognize recurring triggers and patterns, allowing you to respond with wisdom rather than being swept away by automatic negativity. This approach fosters not only mental peace, but also improved decision-making, better relationships, and greater overall well-being. Patience and consistency are essential in this process. The mind is accustomed to generating a constant stream of thoughts, and attempting to silence it forcefully will only create frustration. Instead, by adopting the role of an observer, you gradually reduce the influence of negative thoughts. Each moment of mindful observation strengthens the neural pathways associated with calmness and awareness, making it easier to maintain mental clarity over time. The more you practice, the more you train your mind to recognize thoughts as mere mental events. rather than defining truths, and the more naturally they begin to lose their power over your emotions, actions, and self-perception. Gratitude is one of the most transformative practices you can cultivate to silence negative thoughts, yet it is often underestimated in its power. The human mind has a natural tendency to focus on what is lacking, what is wrong, and what could go poorly, and this habitual focus on scarcity fuels anxiety, self-doubt, and negativity. Gratitude shifts the focus from what is missing to what is present, from limitations to possibilities, and from fear to appreciation. When you deliberately choose to recognize the blessings in your life, no matter how small, you create a mental environment in which negative thoughts naturally diminish. The practice of gratitude begins with simple awareness. It does not require grand gestures or dramatic changes in lifestyle. It starts with noticing the small, often overlooked moments that bring comfort, joy, or inspiration. Perhaps it is the warmth of the morning sun, the sound of a loved one's laughter, the satisfaction of completing a task, or even the quiet rhythm of your own breath. By consciously acknowledging these moments, you create a habit of attention that shifts the mind from dwelling on what is wrong to appreciating what is right. Each act of recognition reinforces the understanding that life, despite its challenges, offers countless reasons for positivity and hope. Gratitude also transforms the relationship you have with your inner dialogue. Negative thoughts often thrive on repetition and reinforcement. When you constantly tell yourself, "I can't do this," or "things will never improve," the mind becomes trapped in a loop of pessimism. By actively replacing these thoughts with expressions of gratitude, such as "I am grateful for the progress I have made," or "I am thankful for the lessons in this challenge," you interrupt the loop and create new neural pathways that strengthen optimism and resilience. Over time, this consistent redirection trains the mind to default toward positivity rather than negativity, making it easier to maintain emotional equilibrium even in stressful situations. Beyond changing thought patterns, gratitude has a profound effect on emotional states. Scientific research has shown that individuals who practice regular gratitude experience higher levels of happiness, reduced stress, and improved overall well-being. When you focus on the positive aspects of life, the body responds by releasing endorphins, reducing stress hormones, and improving heart rate variability, all of which contribute to a calmer, more balanced state of mind. The act of appreciation, therefore, is not merely a mental exercise. It is a physiological tool that strengthens resilience and counters the effects of negativity at a deep, holistic level. The practice of gratitude also cultivates perspective. When faced with setbacks or adversity, it is easy to feel overwhelmed and consumed by the magnitude of the problem. Gratitude allows you to step back and recognize that even in difficult circumstances, there are elements of life that remain stable, nourishing, and supportive. Perhaps it is the love of family or friends, the support of a mentor, the opportunity to learn from a mistake, or the simple gift of another day. This perspective provides balance and prevents negative thoughts from dominating the mind, enabling a more constructive response to challenges rather than a reactive or self-critical one. Gratitude can be expressed in multiple ways, each reinforcing its effect. Journaling, for instance, encourages reflection and repetition, allowing you to record and revisit moments of appreciation regularly. Verbal acknowledgement, whether through a simple thank you to someone or a private affirmation of appreciation, reinforces the emotional impact. Even mindfulness practices can incorporate gratitude by guiding attention to the positive aspects of the present moment, enhancing both awareness and emotional connection. The consistent integration of gratitude into daily life ensures that the mind remains anchored in positivity, reducing the space available for negative thoughts to take hold. The company we keep has an extraordinary influence on the quality of our thoughts and the direction of our lives. Human beings are social creatures, and our minds are highly receptive to the energy attitudes and habits of those around us. Just as sunlight nourishes growth in plants, positive and supportive relationships can cultivate optimism, resilience, and clarity of thought. Conversely, negativity, cynicism, and constant complaining have a contagious effect, quietly seeping into our mindset, shaping our beliefs, and reinforcing doubts. Recognizing the profound impact of our environment is the first step toward taking control of our mental space. Choosing to surround ourselves with people who uplift, inspire, and encourage growth is not just beneficial, it is essential for silencing negative thoughts. Being mindful of the company we keep requires discernment and courage. It may involve stepping away from relationships that consistently drain energy, foster pessimism, or create self-doubt. Often, these relationships are comfortable because they are familiar, yet they subtly reinforce limiting beliefs. Replacing or balancing these influences with individuals who challenge us positively, those who provide constructive feedback, celebrate our successes, and encourage resilience, creates a fertile ground for mental clarity. Surrounding ourselves with such people is a deliberate act of self-care. Akin to pruning a garden, we remove what inhibits growth and nurture what promotes vitality. Beyond personal relationships, the influence of our broader environment cannot be overlooked. Media, books, podcasts, and social networks play a crucial role in shaping thought patterns. Consuming content filled with fear, negativity, or sensationalism can heighten stress and reinforce self-doubt, while exposure to inspirational, educational, and solution-oriented material expands perspective, encourages problem-solving, and fosters hope. By consciously curating the inputs that enter our mind, we provide it with nourishment rather than clutter, giving positive thoughts the space to flourish. It is also important to recognize that influence works both ways. The energy we bring into our interactions affects others, creating a ripple effect. By cultivating positivity, empathy, and encouragement, we not only strengthen our own mindset, but also contribute to an environment in which collective growth is possible. In this way, the practice of surrounding oneself with uplifting company is reciprocal. It reinforces our mental well-being while extending benefits to those around us. This awareness strengthens the sense of purpose and connection that counteracts isolation, fear, and negative rumination. Developing meaningful connections requires intentionality. It involves seeking individuals whose values align with growth, integrity, and resilience, and who challenge us to think, act, and respond with awareness. It may require mentorship, joining communities of like-minded individuals, or engaging in shared learning experiences. Each interaction becomes a microcosm of support, perspective, and encouragement, gradually building a mindset that is less susceptible to negativity. Even casual interactions, when approached consciously, have the potential to shift perspective, inspire action, and reinforce confidence. The subtlety of influence also highlights the importance of reflection and self-awareness. Observing how different interactions and environments affect your thoughts provides critical insight. Are certain conversations leaving you anxious, doubtful, or drained? Are particular media sources filling your mind with fear or pessimism? Awareness allows deliberate adjustment, ensuring that the influences we accept are empowering rather than limiting. Over time, this practice transforms the mind from a passive receptor of external inputs into an active curator of positive, constructive, and growth-oriented experiences. By consistently choosing uplifting company and curating empowering environments, negative thoughts lose their foothold. The mind becomes a reflection of what it consistently experiences, and by feeding it with positivity, wisdom, and encouragement, the natural tendency toward fear, doubt, and pessimism diminishes. The act of surrounding oneself with inspiration is not merely about avoidance of negativity. It is about creating a foundation upon which clarity, resilience, and purpose can thrive, enabling the mind to focus on what is possible rather than what is limiting. Mindfulness is one of the most powerful tools for managing the mind, yet it is often misunderstood as a purely spiritual or meditative practice. In reality, mindfulness is the deliberate cultivation of awareness in the present moment, a conscious attention to one's thoughts, emotions, and sensations without judgment or distraction. Negative thoughts tend to dominate the mind because they are habitual and automatic. They arise from past experiences, fears about the future, or conditioned patterns that have taken root over time. Mindfulness interrupts these automatic processes by creating a pause, a space between stimulus and response where awareness replaces reaction. When practiced consistently, it allows individuals to observe their mental landscape with clarity, diminishing the influence of negative thought patterns. At its core, mindfulness is about cultivating a relationship with your mind that is rooted in curiosity rather than fear. Instead of resisting negative thoughts or labeling them as inherently bad, mindfulness invites you to notice them, understand them, and allow them to exist without attachment. This approach transforms the way we experience our inner dialogue. Thoughts such as "I am not capable" or "things will never improve" are no longer commands that must be obeyed, but transient mental events that can be acknowledged and released. By developing this perspective, the mind learns that it does not need to be hijacked by every thought that arises, creating a sense of autonomy and mental freedom that is both empowering and stabilizing. The practice of mindfulness can take many forms, and it is accessible to anyone willing to engage consistently. Meditation, for instance, provides a structured environment in which to focus attention, observe the flow of thoughts, and cultivate calm. Simple practices such as focusing on the breath, body scanning, or guided visualization enhance concentration and build the skill of observing without reacting. Even outside of formal meditation, mindfulness can be integrated into daily activities. Paying full attention to routine tasks, noticing sensations, or reflecting on emotional responses in real time transforms ordinary experiences into exercises of mental clarity and self-awareness. Mindfulness also strengthens emotional intelligence, which is critical for silencing negative thoughts. By observing the mind without judgment, individuals develop insight into their triggers, habitual responses, and internal narratives. This awareness allows for thoughtful choice rather than impulsive reaction. For example, noticing the onset of self-doubt in a professional setting enables a deliberate shift in focus toward competence, preparation, and confidence, rather than being carried away by anxiety. Over time, this habitual recognition strengthens the mind's resilience, making it less susceptible to the spiral of negativity that often accompanies stress, uncertainty, or perceived failure. Physiologically, mindfulness has profound effects on the body and brain. Studies have demonstrated that regular mindfulness practice reduces stress hormones, lowers blood pressure, improves sleep, and enhances cognitive function. By reducing the physiological impact of stress, mindfulness creates a mental environment in which negative thoughts are less likely to take hold. The mind and body are interconnected, and the calm induced through mindful awareness creates a feedback loop that reinforces clarity, focus, and emotional stability. Another essential aspect of mindfulness is its role in developing acceptance. Life inevitably presents challenges, setbacks, and uncertainties, and resisting these realities often intensifies negative thinking. Mindfulness cultivates the ability to accept experiences as they are without attachment or aversion. This acceptance does not mean resignation or passivity. Rather, it allows the mind to respond from a place of clarity and composure, rather than fear, anger, or frustration. By observing the present moment fully, individuals gain the power to respond with wisdom, maintain perspective, and prevent negative thoughts from escalating into patterns of despair or self-doubt. Consistency and patience are crucial in developing mindfulness. The mind is trained over years of habit, and cultivating awareness is a gradual process that requires repeated effort. Each moment of mindful observation strengthens neural pathways associated with focus, calmness, and emotional regulation. Over time, this practice transforms the way the mind functions, naturally reducing the frequency and intensity of negative thoughts while promoting a sense of inner peace, clarity, and groundedness that enhances every aspect of life. Every challenge, setback, or obstacle in life carries with it the potential for growth, yet the mind has a tendency to perceive these experiences through a lens of limitation and fear. Negative thoughts often arise when we interpret difficulties as failures or threats, rather than as opportunities for learning and development. The practice of reframing challenges is a powerful tool for silencing these thoughts, because it allows us to shift perspective from one of scarcity and defeat to one of possibility and empowerment. When we consciously choose to view adversity as a teacher rather than an enemy, the mind becomes more resilient, adaptable, and constructive in its approach to life. Reframing begins with a conscious awareness of thought patterns. When faced with a difficult situation, the mind may instinctively generate narratives of doubt, self-criticism, or fear. Observing these narratives without judgment is the first step toward transformation. Once we recognize that these thoughts are habitual responses rather than absolute truths, we create the opportunity to replace them with more constructive interpretations. For instance, instead of thinking, "I failed, so I am not capable," one might consider, "This setback is a lesson in what strategies need adjustment, and I have the ability to improve." This shift transforms the emotional response from despair to curiosity and determination, redirecting energy toward problem solving and growth rather than self-recrimination. The process of reframing also relies on recognizing the impermanent nature of challenges. Life is a series of dynamic events, each with its own beginning, middle, and end. When a negative thought arises in response to a problem, it is often amplified by an assumption that the situation is permanent or unchangeable. By consciously reframing the challenge as a temporary circumstance and identifying actionable steps, the mind gains a sense of control and direction. This empowers individuals to engage actively with difficulties rather than being overwhelmed by them, reducing the emotional weight that fuels negative thinking. A critical aspect of reframing is the cultivation of curiosity and learning. Every obstacle carries information about our strengths, limitations, and areas for growth. By asking reflective questions such as, "What can I learn from this?" or "How can this experience strengthen me?" the mind shifts from a reactive mode of fear and resistance to a proactive mode of insight and adaptation. This approach transforms challenges into stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks, allowing negative thoughts to lose their dominance as the mind becomes focused on solutions, progress, and personal development. Reframing is also enhanced by storytelling and perspective-taking. Observing how others have navigated similar challenges can provide both inspiration and practical insight. Mentors, biographies, and historical examples illustrate that setbacks are often temporary and that perseverance, creativity, and resilience lead to eventual success. Internalizing these examples allows the mind to recontextualize its own difficulties, viewing them not as insurmountable problems, but as natural and navigable parts of the human experience. Moreover, reframing challenges encourages emotional regulation. Negative thoughts often intensify because they are intertwined with strong emotional responses, fear, anger, or frustration. By consciously choosing to interpret challenges In terms of growth and opportunity, emotional intensity is reduced and clarity of thought is enhanced. This permits rational, strategic responses instead of impulsive reactions that can exacerbate stress or self-doubt. The repeated practice of reframing strengthens the brain's neural pathways associated with resilience, optimism, and problem solving, making it easier over time to maintain a constructive mindset even in the face of adversity. Reframing is not about denying reality or ignoring difficulties. It is about actively choosing a lens through which to interpret and engage with life's experiences. By adopting this perspective, the mind gradually becomes less susceptible to negative spirals and more inclined towards solutions, learning, and empowerment. Challenges become sources of insight rather than triggers of fear, and each reframed experience reinforces the habit of viewing life through a lens of possibility and strength. Consistency is the cornerstone of any transformation, and when it comes to silencing negative thoughts, it is the bridge between intention and lasting change. The human mind is shaped by habit, and just as destructive thought patterns are formed over time, so too can constructive mental habits be cultivated with persistent effort. Each positive thought, mindful observation, act of gratitude, or reframing of a challenge is a small but significant step toward rewiring the brain. The cumulative effect of these actions builds resilience, mental clarity, and emotional stability, creating an internal environment where negativity has less room to take root. Without consistency, even the most powerful strategies remain sporadic, and the mind reverts to its familiar patterns of self-doubt, fear, and criticism. Consistency begins with daily practice and intentionality. It is not enough to occasionally reflect on positive thoughts or practice mindfulness when convenient. The mind requires repeated reinforcement to establish new pathways. Just as a muscle strengthens through repeated exercise, the neural networks that support positivity and resilience become stronger with regular use. Each day presents opportunities to observe thoughts without judgment, to express gratitude, to seek uplifting influences, and to reframe challenges. Over time, these repeated actions accumulate, creating a momentum that gradually transforms how the mind responds to stress, setbacks, and uncertainty. Patience is an integral component of consistency. The results of disciplined mental practice are often subtle at first, and the mind may resist change because it is accustomed to ingrained patterns. Early efforts may feel awkward or ineffective, and old habits may resurface with surprising frequency. Persistence during this phase is critical. Recognizing that growth is gradual encourages a compassionate approach toward oneself, allowing the mind to adapt without judgment or frustration. Each instance of returning to practice, even after a lapse or setback, strengthens the habit and reinforces the neural foundations for sustained positive thinking. Consistency also fosters self-accountability and personal responsibility. By committing to regular practices that nurture mental well-being, individuals take ownership of their internal state rather than relying on external circumstances for emotional stability. This shift in responsibility is empowering, as it recognizes that while life's challenges are inevitable, the response to them is within one's control. Daily engagement with positive practices reinforces this agency, reminding the mind that it has the power to shape thought patterns, emotional responses, and ultimately life experiences. Furthermore, consistency amplifies the effectiveness of all other strategies for silencing negative thoughts. Gratitude, mindfulness, reframing challenges, and curating supportive environments yield more profound results when applied repeatedly. The cumulative effect of daily practice strengthens not only mental resilience but also emotional intelligence, focus, and self-awareness. Over time, the mind begins to anticipate positivity, seeking constructive interpretations and responses automatically, reducing the energy and effort required to maintain a calm, balanced state. The rhythm of consistent practice cultivates a sense of discipline and structure in life. Life's unpredictability can often trigger anxiety or negative spirals, yet consistent habits create anchors that stabilize the mind. Daily rituals of reflection, meditation, gratitude, or mindful engagement serve as touch points that reorient attention and provide continuity amidst chaos. These anchors ensure that even during challenging periods, the mind has familiar mechanisms to counteract negativity, maintaining a trajectory toward mental clarity and emotional balance. Consistency also reinforces self-belief. Each repeated practice is a small testament to the individual's commitment, capability, and determination. This repeated evidence of effort strengthens confidence in one's ability to manage thoughts, handle challenges, and cultivate inner peace. The mind begins to internalize the principle that deliberate, persistent effort leads to measurable change, creating a foundation for long-term resilience and a mindset that naturally favors positivity over negativity. Through patience, discipline, and repeated practice, the power of consistency transforms fleeting efforts into permanent mental habits. Each action reinforces the other, creating an interlinked framework for mental clarity, emotional stability, and purposeful living. The mind, nurtured consistently, gradually becomes a fortress of resilience, capable of observing negative thoughts without being consumed by them, embracing challenges with wisdom, and maintaining a sense of peace and optimism regardless of external circumstances. So, the next time a negative thought arises, smile at it, acknowledge it, and let it float away like a leaf on a river. Silence is not the absence of noise, it's the presence of peace. And that, my friends, is how you can silence your negative thoughts forever. Thank you